Hi, I'm Laurie from Interior Design Community, and this is To the Trade. And we have Nile here as always. Hi, Nile. How's it going?
Good for you.
How are you feeling? You feel better?
I'm super happy to be vertical, right? The vertical, horizontal. I'm super happy to be
Vertical's
vertical.
a good thing to be. Yeah.
Yes. Grateful for that.
That's awesome. And then, of course, we have Shelly Hudson, who I've known you for a long time, Shelly. You're an amazing designer, number one, that first and foremost, out of the LA area.
Thank you.
But you're also just like an amazing person. We just love you.
Thank you. I
Oh,
try.
so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to talk to you. What we'll start in the very beginning. Let's just start at what it is that drew you to the world of interior design. What's that story?
So it's not necessarily a traditional story. I grew up kind of just like a little girl in my bedroom wanting to make things orderly. So I was like a clean, messy kid, if that makes any sense. Everything had its place, but I was
Totally
also as
sucks.
a teenager like sleeping in my bed with whatever the clothes, like half my wardrobe that my parents would make me pick up off the floor. I just put it in the bed and sleep there. So I haven't always been, kind of a super organized and orderly person, but I wanted everything to have a place. And I was really particular about matching things and reading sort of grown up um, like pretty magazines like Architectural Digest and shelter magazines that most kids weren't really interested in. So I kind of didn't understand. I knew what an interior designer was, but I didn't understand that it was a thing that I could be. It was like, oh, I could be a
Right.
movie star or a race car driver or an interior designer. It seemed just out of reach, a little bit too glamorous for where I came from and, my lifestyle, my family's lifestyle. So I just kind of always had a little bit of a knack for it. And I was drawn to that world without even understanding that I could do this with my life. And
Right.
so I have a degree in communications. I went to college but I've always had a creative side. I'm not a very good artist, but I love drawing and I love fonts and calligraphy and that type of thing. So I'm just drawn to creative endeavors. I'm drawn to other artists. I love music. I love dance. I love consuming art and culture. So um, I kind of was thinking maybe I would be a journalist of some sort or in communications in some way, written or broadcasting or some sort of media, maybe. Then I moved to California when I was 21 and just got a bartending job. I was just trying to be a person who lives in Southern California, like a lot of us do. You come out here and to check things out. And I met a girlfriend who was a waitress, a cocktail waitress in the place I was bartending. So we were just like rollerblading during the day, but she really had this affinity for making a nice apartment and I wanted to make a nice apartment. So we kind of together had this idea that we could open a retail store and this is the shabby chic days and we were really heavily influenced by Rachel Ashwell and vintage stuff. And I lived close enough to the Rose Bowl, so started going to flea markets just sort of as a hobby, like a hobby, which became a habit. So it was that little seed that it's sort of another person helped me and I helped her believe that this is a thing we could do. And
I love that.
yeah, together we just started. We were both married to handy people at the time. So we just started getting little tables for $5 at the flea market or at garage sales. We're paint spraying them in our garage and rubbing sanding the sides off. You know how a lot of us were making
I remember that.
yellow at the time. I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate. And then I realized that this is something that I could and should be doing with my life. I just wasn't interested uh, as passionately in really anything else. And so I kind of came to interior design sort of around the backside as a furniture refinisher. We started getting a bunch of vintage chandeliers at the Rose Bowl, and we'd have them rewired by an electrician, and we were just selling them for what we thought was like so much money to store owners. And so we couldn't get enough of these things. So we started our own line of lighting. We went to like casting foundries that still casted the old molds out of zinc, and we sent them to a powder coater. Anyway, we had this whole line of lighting. And so each of these steps brought me closer to being a designer because I was sort of touching that world. And, you know, I was always working on my own apartment. And then my ex and I would move, you know, we're clawing our way west, you know, moving two bucks closer to the beach if an apartment came open over there, while kind of figuring out that this is what I wanted to do. Started helping friends and family with their houses and apartments and doing faux finishes in people's bathrooms, you know. And so then I just started telling people that I'm an interior designer, sort of, and until it came true. And here we are.
You know what? That blows me away. And Nile, when we do this post, I'm going to make sure I put some of Shelly's work, because what you're describing and her current work today could not be further apart.
Yeah. Oh, yes, for sure.
She
And
does,
came
like,
about it in a route one way.
very
I did have a
clean,
knack.
very modern, like, holy shit,
You evolved.
design.
I think that, yeah. You evolved.
But
I
it's like
love
we
that
all have that
story, though.
foundation, right? I mean, that is
Yeah.
so like trading spaces.
Yeah, that was happening. Yeah,
Cool.
all that stuff was happening at the time. HDTV was becoming a thing. And, you know, certainly my taste and style evolved as I was getting sort of a trial by
absolutely.
fire education. Luckily, I live
Yeah.
in Los Angeles County, and there's every kind of fabricator here. I can get anything made of metal, anything made of wood, any upholstered goods. So people, also, there were lots of people, it was a very creative time. And there were lots of people in LA County who were willing to give two young girls a hand up. I was in my 20s and just trying to figure this out, and thought, like, if I could just make a living without having to get a real job, like, so that was kind of the goal. And then as
Right.
and I'm kind of 50% left brain, 50% right brain. And so I thought I'd be a person who could have a head for business. But I didn't study business, but I knew there were elements of it that I'm super organized, of course, which you have to be for this job. So I thought this would be something I could, had some talent a little bit, and I've had some organization and some business sense. So with the help of many other people who are willing to share their expertise with me, I sort of faked it till I made it.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I love, and your work is so, so
Thank
good.
you.
I mean, you're absolutely a needed person in that industry, in that area. And not only that, but something else that made us instant friends is you believe so strongly in community, which is so awesome to see. And you created, with your friendships and your group, sort of like not a traditional path. Like, you didn't do like ASID and KBA. You started your own group of other designers, and there are what, 12, 15 of you?
Yeah. Well, there are 9, and then we have some fringe.
Yes. And they share, Nile, like everything. They're open books, like finances, every ask, like, this is how we'd handle every situation. Really, truly, like, non-partner partners, you know, so they're not physically in business together, but they are in business together, and they're local to each other, which is another thing that is just very unusual in this industry, to see a group of people who are competitive area, but that are treating it this way. And I love it because it's been super successful for you too, which it opens the doors for other designers to recognize that you can be really, really tight with your local design community and really sharing real information, and it ends up lifting everyone up. It doesn't take away from one designer. tell what you charge on that job and how
Agreed.
much you made and where you think you could have done better. It made you all better. And
Or that you
that's
had
what the result
trouble, or that you were fired, or whatever
right.
where your vulnerabilities are, your weaknesses are, and you can ask for support and not feel like they're going to use it again. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And that's how she really feels. So
Yeah.
tell me how that started and like how it became such an important part of how you do business.
Well, as I described the background and, and by the way, I've been doing this for, I think 28 or 29 years now. So, my business has had many iterations with clients, with the economy, with how I approach the job. When you first start in a business, your phone rings and you just pick it up and say like, whatever it is, yes. Whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
I will do that. Whatever it is, I'm an expert at that. And then you hang up the phone and you're like, how do I get a custom lampshade made? Man, I don't know who does this. And back then
Right.
there wasn't Google.
This is before Google.
Yeah, that's where Google. And so, the figuring out of things that I had to do made me better at everything I do. And so, again, just mentioning the people who were willing to give two young women a hand up and share knowledge instead of gatekeeping information or being worried about competition or a resource or a vendor, for example, made me a lot more open to helping other people, especially other women in business, help figure things out. Um, and so I started this group that has grown to 9 people plus a few more. I call them the French people, but the people who help support us. We are 9 interior designers. We all focus on primarily residential. We are all mostly in the same area of Los Angeles County. It's called the South Bay or Beach City area, somewhere near LAX airport-ish. We sort of all work on this west side of LA together. Some of us interview for the same jobs with the same clients, not intentionally really, but I'm using these marketing strategies for my business, and some of my friends are using the same ones or different ones, and we hear about them. Some are more or less effective for each of us. But because I came to this job sort of indirectly and organically, I have never worked for another interior design firm. I have just figured out all of my systems and processes, whether it was like handwriting on a legal pad back in the day, to what is the project management software, what is everybody doing for accounting. Now I can Google it, and so I can kind of figure it out through more direct channels. But I always had questions of other interior designers, like, well, what if you are working for someone and they're like batshit crazy, or you are working with one person in the family and then the partner comes in or the spouse comes in and is like suddenly shows up when you send an invoice, all these questions that just send you into a panic. Or boy, I really have a professional challenge, whether it is with a client, with a vendor, with a tradesperson, whether I need a backup tile guy or because my dude is busy, whatever it is. I always sort of wished I had someone to just deliver information to me, because boy, after a couple of decades of figuring everything out, I'm just tired of figuring everything out. Just reinventing the wheel again and again. So I had a person I was working with named Denise, who was a good friend of mine, who was helping me with business development. And she's just a genius, a business genius, who would work for these big giant companies. And she was a friend of mine, lucky for me. And so she was just helping my small business with like, oh, do you even know what a marketing strategy is? Because I've just been waiting for referrals. And, I hadn't had to be yet very proactive. in growing my business or understanding that I could select my own clients. Sort of it goes two ways. So she's the one who brought the idea of starting the group. And I sort of knew casually a few other designers around town just through trade events. Kohler, the plumbing brand, had thrown a couple of events locally and invited 5 or 8 designers, for like a focus group type of meetings. And so I met a few there. We found, we're out in the parking lot after looking at all the faucets. All of us are out in the parking lot, really saying like, oh, what's your business like? Are you busy? Are you, what?
I love when that stuff
Well,
happens. I watched that happen for designers
so
like
good.
1,000 times. It's so cool. It's so cool when all of you get done with doing the like corporate thing, and then you're like, okay, nitty gritty stuff.
Yes.
Like,
So now
I
we
love
share
that.
everything. We share marketing strategies. We share our contracts, every resource. There's no gatekeeping. We have a text group with all of us, and all day long it's buzzing. I just said to the group yesterday, I have a client whose sister bought an older home and needs some asbestos remediation. I've never come in contact with that. Who has an asbestos guy? And some of us were like, nope, never had to deal with it. And then sure enough, 3 out of us said, call this guy. And then Corey Kingston, a very talented designer in our group, had a call with a remediation company and had taken a note in her phone of a bunch of stuff that she didn't know because she had never encountered it, like the stuff I don't know, and sent us the note out of her
Oh my
iPhone.
God.
So I just
Love
asked
it.
some to the client. I said, I have no idea, but let me ask my design group. And then within an hour, I was able to funnel this information to my client. She knew it wasn't really my own contact, but so I was able to provide that value to my client that somebody else gave me. We're doing that all day long about people. We're commiserating about clients like, oh my God, I think I have to quit this job, or how do I get myself fired from a job? All of it. It's been great.
I love
Wow.
that you do that. I mean, Nile, I see you the entire time she's talking. Like, that's what the reason, honestly, we started interior design community too, was just to have the ability to share information with one another. And, we just weren't seeing it happen.
Oh.
I had attended numerous events at this point within the associations. And it was a lot of like, kiss and how are you doing? Oh, amazing. How are you doing? I can't even believe I'm here. I'm so busy. The phones that like go ringing off the hook, like, and you're just like, you're all liars.
Yeah. That's not the truth. Or like if people ask me to go to dinner or lunch and I don't like, I want to connect. I want to I can
Real.
see a beautiful room or talk about fabrics and finishes at market or at some other event. Like if we're going to dinner or we're going to meet outside of a trade event, let's like really connect. And if we're sitting there and we're having this same sort of surface level conversation, then what's the point? It's like pulling teeth, and I can't, I feel like where we are vulnerable, where we sort of share I hate to say weaknesses, but where we sort of share our vulnerabilities and, where we want to learn and grow, I feel like that's where connection sort of happens, right? And it's the secret sauce, I think. I think we are so afraid of sharing, like it's going to keep us back when ultimately it's what pushes everybody forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So strange
But
to
you
me.
have to, it also has to be a two-way street, because I can tell you, I went to a design event,
Yes, it
say
does.
like a year ago, and there was a designer who was like, I can't get anybody locally to hang out with me. I'll call them up and they'll say, I want to go to coffee. And then they say, why would I want to go to coffee with someone who is my competition? And I was like, I can't believe that happened to you. And so I contacted immediately like friends of mine that I knew in her area, set this designer up for conversations with designers I knew. And I got back to them later on. I was like, so how did that go? Like, she doesn't know anybody in the area and she's really trying to start. And they're like, it was one of those things where it was only one way. Like, she wanted to pick my brain, but wasn't giving me any information back either. And so I was like, oh man.
Well,
But
it's funny about that though. Can I say, like, I remember we talked about this before. I think sometimes for people who are just starting, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they can bring to the table. Like,
yeah,
I feel like they are really coming with the intention of not being greedy, but also feeling like they are going to the mountaintop. Like, they are not the expert in the situation. And so they are coming like as sort of like a sponge, and they want to get as much info as they can. And I think they would happily share, but it's almost a thing of like, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to sound stupid. Like, what am I going to tell you? Like, what could I possibly, do you know what I mean? I think sometimes people really
well,
do,
there's a lot of that in our industry where we think everyone's got it figured out. I
and you
think that there's
don't.
a lot of that.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where
It's a fallacy.
it's
Yeah.
our responsibility as people who have been in the industry longer to say that. You
Yeah.
set the precedent at that meeting. Hey, look, I'm meeting with you because I know I didn't have it figured out when I was in your position. And guess what? P.S. I still don't have it all figured out.
Right.
So please, like, let's make this a two-way street.
Right.
Feel free to share with me, like, anything that you come across that's really cool, because I would love to share anything that I come across that's really cool too. Like, let's
There's
make this
always something
yeah.
that you might know even as a new designer. I mean, I have had conversations with this new designer. I personally don't care. I will just like, I usually like vomit perfect information when somebody calls me and they're like, all right, how many, I'm like, how much time? Yeah, because I can talk to you for 5 hours, tell you everything you're gonna,
There's
like, I can
something
just
nice
keep going.
about like having all this experience behind you and
Yeah.
just handing it over. I don't mind. And honestly,
I don't mind either.
what you're saying, Laurie, about the two designers you connected, and one of them feeling like it was a one-way street. Honestly, we did start. I think the first couple of little meetings, I just invited a bunch of people over to my house and said, like, I kind of want to start this group. If you're interested, come on over. And I think for some of us, we had a few people who I think wanted to just take the temperature of what's everybody doing. And I don't want anybody doing anything behind my back, but I'm not really prepared to come and give all my trade secrets. So there was sort of a little bit of a weeding process, because also I want this to be really like, I go to the markets, right? And I see all the chicks with stilettos and the Birkin walking around for like 10 hours a day. And I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, your poor feet. Or you're just going to the bathroom like every 20 minutes and like refreshing your lipstick. Like
Crying.
who has the
Crying.
time,
I'd be
right?
crying with stiletto.
Yes. So
I'd be going into the bathroom stall and crying my eyes
right.
out.
Yeah. I'm just like, like, I love your tote bag, but I have too many pieces of paper. All of it, there's all kind of fun, cool things going on.
Someone is at front door.
There's something about the connecting of everybody being a personal and professional connection, because I don't mind that my group is smaller. I don't need to be one of 50 interior designers in my county or in this area of my county.
Yep.
And I'll just put it this way. I know a lot more designers than the number of designers in my group. And there's a reason why my group is small. And it's not just because I wanted a small group. I do think it's easier, and I like the camaraderie that we share. But I also was looking for women with whom I share common sensibilities. I don't know, however you would characterize it, but I like other
There could be
people with a sense
right?
of humor, who can laugh at the stuff that I can laugh at, who can bring some humility to this situation. Like, oh God, I measured this thing wrong, or I bought way too much tile. What am I gonna do with this tile? Can anybody use this tile? Like, how you're just sort of in a panic. And, I just text my friends and say like, okay, listen to this. what am I going to do about this? And then I'll have messages of support. Of course, we're sending screenshots from clients. Get a load of this, probably I should keep that to myself for the most part. Depending on who happens to see this, but there's something about having people who do what I do come in behind and say like, oh, wow, that was sort of a gnarly text, or what can we help you, how can we help you resolve that? And
Yeah.
we are all absolutely, genuinely in support of everyone else. There's no jealousy. There's no competition. Like I said at the top of this, I think when we started talking about this group, we have interviewed recently, very recently, for the same job. And usually if I get an inquiry from somebody, Jan Smith, I'll text and say like, is anybody else talking to Jan Smith? And sometimes somebody else is like, oh, she called me too. And depending on what type of job it is, if it's like a consulting job or a smallish job that I might not be interested in. So some of the designers in our group have small kids and they want to do kind of in and out type projects. So that I'll refer out to somebody else in the group. And it's been a situation that we've created where everyone comes to the table and lays it all on the line, and there's no ego whatsoever.
It sounds like quality, not quantity.
Yeah,
it is
quality,
quality.
not quantity.
You
Yeah.
curated a group of people who bring quality to the table
Yeah,
in
you have
every
to
way.
will 'em.
And there's no hidden motives. You know what I mean? No hidden motives. Everybody just wants good for everyone else.
Yeah, and we've
you know?
curated that like quite deliberately.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been very selective about who is coming into our group because we are sharing a lot and we can't have anybody.
Yeah. Like I've recommended people to her group, but I would only recommend a certain kind of person to her
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I know what it is she'd be looking for.
Wow.
And I'd be trying to make sure I'm making a good faith. I mean, I can't be 100% sure, but I mean, I do good faith gesture of like, I vouch for this person.
Yeah,
They're a good person.
We like-minded people, cool people.
Yeah.
We like drinking wine when we're getting together. We love to have lunch and learns. So a fabric wrap, a furniture wrap can come to my group at one of our homes, present to 9 of us, show up with some salads. We'll listen to whatever you have to say. It's fantastic.
Nice.
I love that.
That's a win all around, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, we had Design Edge, when I was talking to Design Edge and I'm still talking to them, but I mean, we're doing our conference with them in September when they have their next show in your backyard in Anaheim. And I made sure they contacted you because I'm like, you're going to be near Shelly and her group and you're going to want their opinion. And they were blown away by the information they got from your group.
Oh,
they
we are dripping with opinions. We've got nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's important for people who are putting together events or even like local reps that are in the area to be like, well, here's a group of people I can get in with. But the wonderful thing I really wanted the listeners to hear is that, because I know so many designers out there, maybe you've been to an NKBA event, maybe you've been to an IDS event or an ASID event, and you just don't fit in for whatever reason. You're just not. I mean, I find IDS does a really decent job, and ASID and NKBA do too, but just it's chapter by chapter. So some chapters are better than others, and sometimes you fit in, and sometimes you don't. I love the idea that you just took it upon yourself to create your own. I think that is so amazing because honestly, it shows ingenuity. Because I think that so many people would have just been like, well, I can't find anything. So I guess
I can't recommend highly enough finding people with whom you can connect personally and professionally in your own hood I have a lot of resources. I've been doing this a really long time. And there is a little trepidation before you just sort of give everybody your, the playbook, give other
Right.
people the playbook. But I get your playbook, and there's a lot I don't know. There's always a lot you don't know, but
There's always something you can learn
absolutely,
from someone else, no matter what. I mean, if somebody came, there might be a brand new like I'll say there's a brand new designer I know. She's probably been practicing for four years or so. And but she had come from the banking industry. So she knows a ton about finance. I mean, she was a president of a bank. She wasn't just like in Boston. So like this is somebody you want to know.
she's got
Like,
intel.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
She's going to tell you don't know. And she definitely handles the finance side of her business incredibly well. And that is a bunch of information that I know designers in Boston that would love to meet with her and love to have her in the group. And it's those kinds of people where don't shy away from it, but be the kind of designer who is trustworthy too. That if you want to build a circle like this, if you want to build a circle of friends, you have to be as trustworthy as you're expecting other people to be.
absolutely.
So, it's like you have to be someone who isn't going to sabotage somebody just by learning this information. You're not using it against them.
Yes, it's not an angle. It is absolutely
No, it's not an angle.
When you're thinking about when other designers are thinking about putting something like this together, there are a couple of things to think about. There are a couple of goals to keep in mind. Some of the designers in my group are my own best friends now. And I mean, truly. And
I love that. I love that.
we have so much in common, what we're dealing with on a daily basis. And we're in communication every day through our group. Even if I'm not contributing, I see what's going on with everybody else. And that's so valuable, like I said, both personally and professionally. However, like I said, we're not coming to the group with an angle of necessarily like, what can I get from everybody? There's an element of that, but it's mostly what can I give and how can we be cooperative?
How can I support?
We're also
Yeah.
at with Design Edge too, talking to Lee and Kelly and talking to you extensively, Laurie, also about this. There's something that is empowering when we have a group of 9 designers and I get some measure of crap from a trade vendor who is not honoring a return policy, making it difficult to order from you, giving me a hard time. And we all know this, luckily it's not the norm. We all have something like, hey man, this is damaged. We documented the damage.
This is not fair.
This
is not professional.
Yeah. And there's something about the power of getting some pushback for a company and saying, here's this though. I'm copying 8 other LA-based interior designers. We're all doing millions upon millions of dollars of revenue. We're specifying millions of dollars of goods, each one of us every year. And all 9 of us is or has done business with your company. And I think this is not fair. And maybe so do the other 8 designers that I'm copying on this email. So who can we talk to and what can we do about this situation? Because this just doesn't seem like a good policy, or you're changing your terms or whatever. And I can't tell you how effective it's been. I try not to just play this, it's not about power.
I have to tell you, I've done the same thing for designers.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Hundreds of times.
And having
hundreds
leverage.
of how quickly and message from interior design community to the CEO of a company changes the whole situation.
And Laurie knows
because they're like, oh,
Laurie,
shit, I don't want 100,000 designers to know about this.
Yeah, and
But
it's amazing
when you see it's unfair.
we think
It's
that.
right.
So what
I mean, I'm okay with like a policy, like I don't want to get involved if it's a policy. And sometimes I will say I have had situations where the designer was somewhat at fault too, so, but I will always try to see if there's a mediation opportunity for the brand and designer. At the end of the day, we want to work well together. And there has to be a fair, equitable solution to almost any problem. Like there has to be a fair, equitable solution that is doing the right thing, whatever that thing might be. And sometimes it's really difficult sometimes brands are thinking, especially on the low level, like it might be it's not being escalated to the right person. And it's just like an independent rep saying no because they don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally just had the same situation with the upholstery line. They shall remain nameless. But I mean, I'm fine with rules, but I said to her, it would have been great if you would have said that this was the rule when we discussed this 6 months ago, that you were going to decide that when this came down, that you weren't going to do X, Y, or Z. If you would have said, hey, just so you know, if you don't meet the threshold, then there is no chance to reopen your account. That was never established. So I said, because we would have made different choices. Maybe I would have pushed to have more upholstery gone your way, but that wasn't what was stated. It was just, you have to meet this threshold. If not, you have to reopen. So it's just weird that now that changes. And like you said, I'm fine if it's a policy, but it should be a clearly stated policy from the get-go. It's weird when they sort of change the rules as you go along. So yeah, interesting.
Laurie and I
Very,
talked
very interesting.
about this, Nile, and also about, I think when we first started communicating, Laurie, we were talking about a big company and their use and or misuse of intellectual property. And
Right.
you made a vague-ish post about that. And I think I DM'd you and I was like, yeah, listen to this. And I know what that's about. And this is my experience with this large company. We could all, probably everybody's might be thinking of the name of the company, but we really found ourselves commiserating about this and having the same opinion of what kind of was happening. And I'm sure Laurie was thinking, because she's the one who started our community, boy, I bet a lot of people are like-minded, and the power in numbers, it's just proven out. And even in my little,
Well, that's why we've gone like the nonprofit route.
Yeah.
Where and I didn't, so many times people were like, do you want to, would you, every day almost I get a designer who wants me to coach them. And I'm like, you believe me, there are enough coaches in this industry. Don't need to be a coach. Don't need to be a coach. You guys don't need that from me. What you need is me working behind the scenes now that we have these numbers to fix some problems. That's what you need, is you need me working behind the scenes to make sure the problems don't exist for you and clear the runway for you so that you can do your business the way you should be doing your business. So if there are those problems, bring me those problems. I'll see what I can do behind the scenes to fix the problem directly with the brand, because they have a harder time negotiating and saying no to me because they know the numbers that we represent and they don't want it. It's not like blackmail, and I would never do that to a brand, but I do want an equitable solution that works for designers too. I want brands to be fair to designers. And I think that that's all we're at. We're not coming with unrealistic expectations of strong arming brands, but we do, if you, like, for instance, there's a brand out there that's newly says that they're designer friendly. I want to know what designer friendly means. What does that really mean to your company? What are you giving? And I'm not afraid to go back to a brand and say, like, okay, you told me what it is you liked. I really thought about it, or what your plan is for designers. And I don't think it's a good plan. I don't think it's not that. And sometimes they'll put a lot of money into something that I don't think is going to work for the designer. Maybe it's just not how designers want to receive the information, or what they would do with the information, or what they would do with the valuable. I mean, how many times do designers say, I hate getting that, certain, catalog in the mail. That is, 5 inches thick and it goes right in the trash. I mean, what a waste of money to have sent out a humongous catalog that immediately gets thrown in the garbage. And then they also get ripped on by every designer. Right. Ripped on by every designer for being, not understanding, like, hey, we can all look this stuff up. It's not ecologically sound to be sending out thousands of pages of paper to us. So it's listening to designers. Like, what is it that you are What do you want from the brand? And what policies make sense and what policies don't make sense? But that to be said, the other side of the coin of that is, having realistic conversations with the designers too about what they can do on their part to work better with the brand too. Like if there's a scratch on it, because this stuff is really hard to ship to make it perfect.
Yep.
How can a designer mitigate that problem so that the client doesn't see it before, and some of those problems can be fixed before the client sees it. So the client wants it returned and swapped out, and it's like thousands of dollars worth of shipping gone down the drain. Like we own some responsibility there too, that I think sometimes we drop the ball on, and I think sometimes they drop the ball on. So it's like, how do we, I can be a great neutral party who, of course, my first loyalty is to designers. That's all I think about. But I have worked in the corporate world long enough to know, I know that their bottom line needs to be met too. And sometimes you can't accept liability, even when the liability is your fault. I've worked for companies where that has happened.
Just keeping
because
communication open.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So the communication is so right. And I love that you yield that power in a responsible way. It's not meant to like bend them to your will, but it's like, hey, I just want fair.
Oh, sure.
Fair, equitable.
Well, I think you're the person who had to phrase it like this, or maybe it was Lee Hirschberg from Design Edge, and really kind of called out that we are the unpaid sales force of all these vendors. And
I told them that forever.
Yeah.
Like,
boy,
you are.
Like most of that, well, almost all of this is not my money, but the client is not going to buy a thing I don't put in front of him or her.
Right.
So
Right.
if you give me tools, if you tell me the story of this table, or you give me all of the selling points that your sales rep is giving to me, for me to offer to the client to paint the picture I'm trying to, paint in my job here, then, boy, do we both benefit. And I think what you're doing with interior design community is really bringing this to brands, to their feet, and just showing like, okay, we're not just these pains in the booty who are always being like, oh gosh, I know I already ordered 2 finished samples from you, but the client wants to see this other color. Oh, sorry. And, like charging us for all the finished samples and making it difficult, taking 2 weeks to get us something, for us to even be able to communicate to brands what we need to sell their goods, but also, I think it would be so valuable for brands to talk to groups like mine and focus groups like what Design Edge is doing, and even smaller breakout groups at KBiz and other markets, even casually for a CEO to stand in front of 5 or 8 designers, because we've seen it happen, and say, okay, who among you orders from my company? And if you don't, why don't you? And if you do, what would help you order more or do more business with me? And off the top of our heads, like, because even among, our texting, like, oh, does anybody do business outdoor furniture company X, Y, and Z? And I'll say, oh, I ordered something a couple of years ago, and and maybe I haven't thought of them again because their website is kind of janky and it's just not that easy, or maybe they're not in my face enough, or I think the swatches are a little bit weird. I don't know. Like it's just not easy to order from a company. Or I never heard from the rep, or it just, they're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. It seems like shipping would just be a lot, but maybe I don't even know. Oh, it's free shipping, or it's, it's a capped shipping. And so it's that information that, that will keep me from ordering from a company that might otherwise give me great service, have great product. If it's not
Great relationship.
Yeah, relationship.
Absolutely.
I don't have a good relationship with the rep, or I don't really want to deal with an ineffective rep, I have some other options. And it's that easy to get more business out of me, is just make it easy to do business with you. And like, here I am. You know, I'm
Yeah.
hungry for resources all the time. I want new and interesting and different. And I know every designer is the same. And I don't know if brands are thinking about that. They're thinking like,
No, I know. I
No.
think
line of case.
I think there are some that do. I think there are some that are really trying to crack the code on like how they can be better. And they will, they will literally like sit me down and ask me questions like, fire hose style of like, would designers think about this? And what would they think about this? So some of them really do, but others are like, it's part of the process to have designers and they care about designers, but they don't really, it's like it's another thing. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're of a higher volume client than a regular everyday homeowner, but they're not the level of a store. And
Which
so,
is crazy to me.
And we are hard to.
Which is crazy to me. Because my clients are not going into a store.
Here's why we are hard is that we are very hard to forecast. That's where we are collectively very difficult group to deal with. Like, how does a lighting brand forecast how much designers are going to buy from them? How, like, collectively? Like, how many of this lamp need to be in stock versus this lamp need to be in stock? How do they forecast for us? We are very hard to forecast.
Ask us.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just a little bit more work. It's just a little bit more work. And I think you have to stop thinking that you have to stop pitting designers. Then not every brand does this, but you have to stop pitting designers against brick and mortars and stop thinking that the brick and mortar is the solution for the designer's library, because they're not. My clients will not. I don't care whether they're working with me or not. I promise you, they're not going into a brick and mortar. They don't have time. So to tell me that to now be serviced, I have to go to such and such brick and mortar down the road because they carry X, Y, and Z line or 200 lines. It doesn't work. It's not that I'm not being stubborn. I'm not, being a stick in the mud. That doesn't work for my clients. Like, first of all, it's not the level of service that I want to provide. It's not the type of experience that my clients want, right? They will never go in there. And there are a lot of designers who have young kids who maybe are home with them during the day or have flexible schedules. And realistically, they're working at night. They are, putting these projects together at night, and they cannot at 10 o'clock at night go into a brick and mortar. Why? Because it's closed. So they need access to pricing and samples and all this stuff at odd hours. And I don't think that brands think about this at all. I think they think that
and the other part of it is that the brick and mortar has, no matter what, a small floor space. They don't have everything that your brand has. Like, just because they rep your brand, you designers typically want something that isn't there. So
that's it. Yep.
And then it feels like a layer of profit that they're losing to give it to the brick and mortar company to order through them, because they are losing that. There still is a MAP price, so that has to be stuck to. And so that means the designer is losing profit for no reason. They have to still do all the work, the heavy lifting of knowing what the product is and what it is they want and how they want to order it, but now have to give profit to a company that isn't really servicing them because they don't even actually have the product that they want. So there's that layer too that is really problematic for just send them to the showroom, which I know if you're a designer who owns a showroom out there, you're listening and going, but I would find it for them and I would do all the work. And I get it. But at the same time, some designers can't work that way.
And I do think there's a difference between a showroom and a brick and mortar. Like, I think there's a difference.
Yeah.
I think that true showrooms, design showrooms that are invested, I think they're different. I think they're sort of like in line with the designers.
But they still have like limited. They can't carry every product from every brand.
No, they can't. No, they can't. They can't. But I think they're like-minded.
More
in terms of what we are going after, right? I think especially those led by designers. I think if you are just collecting vignettes and you just have 3, 4, 5, 600 lines, you're not interested in design. You're interested in peddling furniture. And I'm not knocking anybody's hustle, but that's just something totally different than what we as designers do. Because we had a choice. Like we could have opened a furniture store, but that's not what we do. Like
Right.
we want to create beautiful environments and spaces, and lifestyles. So it's just different. It's just
Yeah.
different. But there is a brand that did do the work, and I'm not going to put them out there. But and I just recently met with this brand. They did the work. They figured it out. I'm telling you, they cracked the code, and I'll tell you guys behind the scenes. And so it's very easy to do, to please everybody. So I know that it can be done. For years I was like, well, I can't. And they finally came back to me. It's like, we figured it out. We know how. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Great, we can do business together, and nobody's going to be upset. Nobody.
I like that.
So
I like
there's a way
nobody
to
being
there's
that part.
And I would love to
there's a
know
way
how
to
to
there.
get out.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a way to do it. I'm telling you, there's a way to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's really fascinating that this is an industry that changes so much. And I think that we're in a very exciting time for the world of design, even though it's a little bit more challenging with the economy right now, and certainly everything that's external happening. I do think it's also got an exciting time that so many brands now are paying attention to designers' voices. It's really kind of, that to me is thrilling. I mean, it really has shifted quite a bit in the most recent years. I think COVID has a lot of brick and mortar shutting down. And because of that, brands that maybe, designers were a small part of their business are now recognizing that designers are a bigger part of their business than they expected. And so they're interested in how they can work with designers better. And some of them really are asking the right questions and trying to learn. And that to me is really exciting when they're actually like, I want to be better. I really want to be better at servicing designers. That is always like,
That's
wow.
great news. And they can just ask us, and we can,
Yeah.
and we will not hold back.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's the thing that, saves them. Like I was saying to Nile a long time ago, there was a designer brand that had like come into this market from, I think that they were Italian, and they made a sink, and they had a designer that is on our board say like, you need a bigger sink. It's America. But we like big sinks. You might not like that in Italy, but we love big sinks. And they made a big sink, and that sink became their best seller here in the United States. It's that kind of conversation with designers that is such a win, because it really will help your brand. We will tell you what we don't like about the product and what we do like about your product. If you listen to a designer and you make those changes, you're going to have a better product.
Absolutely, because we're
I
getting
didn't
all the
track-
client feedback.
Absolutely. And directly. And honestly, like they've tracked that to know that. So like I've had conversations with Kravitz, for instance, and they have said to me that the lines that the designers buy, they like really study the designer buying pattern, because the lines the designers buy are also better, are their best sellers outside of the designer experience. So they're paying attention to what you buy, because that becomes the more popular product. It's like you guys catch it first. You're the first ones. If you're going to market and you see the new lines, you're like, the ones you start to pick up and buy first usually end up being the ones that are the most popular for them.
Go figure.
Overall. Right. Which is fantastic. And it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And it's not
help
just
us
because-
help you.
Yeah. Help us help you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Don't
Exactly.
have an overwhelming website that is not user friendly. Don't make
my
me
God.
go to that Furnish Web thing to figure out the price of something. Don't make me pay for a finished sample when I already do business with you. There's so many little things that are just kind of irksome that can, that can be justified. But if we already have a working relationship, like make it easy for me to do a return. Give me the reps support I need. And there are just a handful of things like you were saying, Laurie and Nile, that will bring us from brushing off a company like, I looked at the website one day and I like couldn't figure anything out. So like, I got to move on. Like
Right.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
spend an hour trying to log in or
Oh my God.
email somebody for a price on something that I'm going to get 3 days later. And then I have to say like, oh, but you didn't tell me what the stocking information is. I need efficiency. Otherwise I'll just go elsewhere. I
Right.
think,
Right.
and we're a different kind of consumer. We're
Yes.
consuming on behalf of other people. So it's my job to specify goods on behalf of somebody else. And
Right.
when I am the client's advocate, and also I'm doing this for a living, and I need to make it easier on myself. And, if I'm buying myself a lamb, I might look for a lamb for 2 hours or whatever, if I really have an idea of what I'm looking for. But when I'm trying to like put a home together, sometimes I might look for a lamp for 2 hours, but probably not. I'm going to go to companies that have the kinds of goods that I know I'm going to find something cool, and they're going to make it easy for me, and it's going to fit within the budget of my project. And if something happens to it, they will just send me another one, and they don't make me prove that here's the picture of the broken packaging. All those little things that I understand why you have to do, but the brands don't understand, like, this is a big detractor in, I buy a lot of stuff, I return a lot of stuff. Like, things get damaged, etc. But you've got to make it easy for me on that end too. Otherwise, like I said,
Right.
we'll move on.
Well, they don't realize too that they just when you lose a designer, you lost. It's going to take a lot to get them back. Like they're open, and then once you got it's like you're talking about all these things. It's like they're very open, and then they find out your website's not so great, and then they find out your reps not so great, and then they find out that your return policy is not so great, and pretty soon that becomes like and then they move on, and it's really hard to get them back to being open again because you have like ruined the trust that they need to have. Because you need things to go efficiently, because it's somebody else's dollar on the line, you have to care even more that you're working with companies that will stand behind you. You have to care even more because it's like now my reputation is on the line as well as my client's money at the same time. And I don't know if they truly understand that. I don't think that many of the brands really get that. I would love to see more. Design Edge is why I have the passion project for Design Edge, is because I'm dying for those conversations to really exist in the space where it's a CEO of a brand, the group of designers just saying like, we love the idea of this product, but this is what would work better. Or we love your range, but we don't love your refrigerator because of these reasons, and we love this about what you have, but we don't like the height of the chairs. They're a little short. Are you getting them from China? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff where we just want to have the real conversation about what is preventing us from buying from you. And to me, that's the gold. That's the gold that you want to be digging out of a designer so that you can shape what you have and what your offering will be, and you're going to sell more overall because of it. Overall, not just to designers, because like we said, Kravitz has studied like the things the designers are like the most become more popular with the consumer too. So like when you introduce your new line, those things that the designers gravitate to are going to be your best sellers typically. So pay attention to what the designers are saying to you and why they don't like something just as much as why they do.
And it's
I love this
fascinating.
so much.
This is fascinating that it's not a matter of course for these companies, that it's like this new thing. Oh, ask the people who are specifying your goods what they think. Like it makes a lot of sense.
I think they've always just viewed designers as this pest, pest who is very particular. And it's a high maintenance client for them. And so it takes more work and it takes more money to serve as a high maintenance client. And that is, not what they've traditionally done, because retail has, for a long time, retail could be counted on being the majority of their sales. And so they didn't really have to think about the higher maintenance part of it. But as retail started to dry up, it's a weird moment because these companies that have always existed behind closed doors or smaller, they didn't really have to compete with like, the big e-commerce companies out there that came in. And they didn't want to really. They didn't want to set up. And right now, competing with somebody who has 20 years in digital marketing background be very difficult for a company that doesn't have that background to compete. So how do they address the market when retail dries up? It's going to have to be designers. That's the only way. It's
Well,
really, we're going to see a big change there because there are going to be some that just don't survive
in your
if
example
they don't get
of Kravit, it's the designers who are driving the retail in a
Yeah.
way. So
Yes.
that's a great example of, I guess it could be argued that a interior designer is like the high maintenance kind of a pesky client, because I do just want one little table every 3 months, and I'm not going to buy 20 of your little tables to put in my store. But if you let me, if you help me out on my little job, like I just need one little table from you and you make it easy, then guess what? I will have a big order for you down the line, and I will be giving you more business and driving more business to you, which will, I
Right.
think, then drive your retail. And who else is getting all this stuff in magazines? It's our hard work. It's not,
Right.
That part.
Debbie and,
Yep.
And not to mention,
else.
you have those 9 other designers that you're going like, this company is great. I love
Yep.
this company, like,
Yep.
and that's what I don't think that they measure that the designers also talk to each other, at least that's what I love to see is more and more designers having those conversations and really helping one another figure out what resources are better for them too. So fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Shelly. This was so great. And we're going to make sure that all of you have her information so you can go over and follow her. She is a real community person. She believes in community. And whether you're close and local to her or far away, I'm sure she'd welcome you as a friend. Thank you, Shelly.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye.